I'm Brianna, and you're watching Dante's Boxing Nation.
L&D on the track.
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? So, I don't know if I can say this is good news yet, and I'll explain in a minute. But according to reports, at least according to Eddie Hearn, negotiations for Canelo Alvarez versus Danny Jacobs are going to start next week. Now, the reason why I say I can't say it's good news yet, because this is just Eddie Hearn talking. We haven't really heard anything from Canelo Alvarez. We haven't really heard anything from Golden Boy, at least when it comes to interest of fighting Danny Jacobs next. Now, Oscar De La Hoya, he said before the fight, he said out of the three, because the reporter asked him, what does he think about facing fighters like Jermall Charlo? And Oscar De La Hoya, he said all of them are going to get it. And Oscar De La Hoya, he mentioned names. These, as a matter of fact, these are the names he mentioned. He mentioned Danny Jacobs, Jermall Charlo, and BJ Saunders. The reporter said, out of the three, who do you guys want first? And Oscar De La Hoya said, we want Danny Jacobs first. But he was just saying out of those three options, not necessarily saying that's who we want next for Canelo Alvarez. He was saying basically if we only had the options of BJ Saunders, Charlo, and Jacobs, we want Jacobs first. Now, Bernard Hopkins, he said after the fight, after Canelo beat Rocky Fielding, that they want to fight David Lemieux at 168. This is the reason why, once again, I'm not getting my hopes up too high, because Eddie Hearn wants to make the fight. Realistically, Eddie Hearn is the only one that really has interest. Eddie Hearn and Danny Jacobs, they're the ones that really have a strong interest in making this fight, is because Eddie Hearn, he actually promotes Danny Jacobs. I don't believe that Canelo Alvarez is in a hurry to take a Danny Jacobs fight, but there's a very good chance that he will fight him next, because DAZN and Eddie Hearn, they want that fight, and they're the ones that are paying Canelo Alvarez. So that's going to make Canelo Alvarez look horrible if his own network, if they want him to fight against the best competition or one of the toughest challenges at the middleweight division, and Canelo Alvarez, he says, no, I'm going to go ahead and look for an easier opponent. I'd rather fight David Lemieux. That would look horrible if Canelo were to pull something off like that. But I am optimistic. I mean, I'm not getting my hopes up too high, but I do believe there's a good chance that we will get Canelo versus Danny Jacobs next. Now, Eddie Hearn, he said, according to reports, his plan is to match Canelo up against Danny Jacobs, and then after Jacobs, match him up against Golovkin a third time. Now notice, he didn't even mention Jermall Charlo's name. That is unbelievable. Jermall Charlo is striking the type of fear in Canelo Alvarez's fans, the media that are protecting Canelo Alvarez. This is why I say it's good to have your hope insurance, because that hope insurance covers everything. If there's an opponent that's too dangerous and the world or the media, they don't want Golovkin or Canelo to lose to that fighter, especially if they're on a coincidental list, all of a sudden that hope insurance kicks in and people start writing articles. Matter of fact, speaking of that, to prove my point, I just looked at an article today, and the writer, he had the nerve to say, after reporting that Eddie Hearn is negotiating to make a Danny Jacobs Canelo fight, this reporter, he had the nerve to write, nobody really wants to see Canelo versus Danny Jacobs. Only person who has interest in that fight is Eddie Hearn. He said the fight that people really want to see is Canelo versus Caleb Smith. Now keep in mind, guys, this is an American reporter saying this. Why would an American reporter be telling American boxing fans that The boxing fans, they don't want to see Canelo versus the American, Danny Jacobs, who coincidentally is one of the champions at the middleweight division. Oh no, they would rather see Canelo Alvarez versus a British fighter that the majority of American fighters don't even know that well. Does that make any sense at all? It doesn't make any damn sense. And we already know how to read this as clear as possible. Guys, I'm telling you, man, everything I tell you guys, it's always proven to be a fact. It always comes to light. I've been telling you guys for years. These fans, their biggest fear is to see Canelo Alvarez lose to a black fighter. That's what they fear the most. They don't care if Canelo loses to Caleb Smith, a fighter who's not black. I mean, don't get me wrong. They're gonna root for Canelo Alvarez. But the point that I'm making is, if Canelo has to lose, these fans, they're saying, please just don't let it be against a Jermall Charlo, against a Danny Jacobs. Please just don't lose to one of them. That's what these fans and writers are saying. How do you speak for all of the boxing fans in America or boxing fans across the world and say fans don't want to see Canelo versus the middleweight champion, the other middleweight champion of the world, Danny Jacobs, but they rather see him against Caleb Smith? And then not even mention fans want to see Canelo versus Charlo. The only fan that does not want to see Canelo versus Charlo is a fan that is petrified that Canelo Alvarez may lose or even get knocked out by Jermall Charlo. That's why I tell you guys all the time, guys, boxing is based on nationality, race, and pride. That's what it's based on, okay? But you know what I really find amazing is we all know Canelo Alvarez has some very prideful boxing fans. Mexican boxing fans are the most prideful fans in the world. And it just surprises me that so many Canelo fans don't have confidence in Canelo actually beating Jermall Charlo. I mean, if you have pride, you should not be making excuses saying, oh, he doesn't deserve to fight Canelo and etc., etc. Wait a minute, he's his mandatory. So you're saying you rather your fighter give up his belt and avoid his number one contender? Do you know how that's going to make Canelo look? That's going to make him look even worse. Any fan that's sitting over here saying, oh, Canelo or Charlo, he doesn't deserve to fight Canelo Alvarez, all you guys are doing, you're making Canelo look even worse. You should never encourage your fighter to duck someone. If anything, you should be sending messages to Canelo saying, Canelo, can you please fight this Charlo guy so we can shut up these naysayers, these people that think you can't beat him, these people that think you can't beat this powerful, athletic, knockout artist, etc., etc., this Lions only character. That's what you should be saying to Canelo Alvarez. I'm telling you fans, you guys are making Canelo and you guys are making yourself look bad when you make excuses for why you don't want to see the fight. No, you should be going balls to the wall saying, let's make this fight happen because I know that my guy Canelo is going to win. I bet the house on that. Canelo is going to mop Charlo, etc., etc. That's what you should be saying, guys. I mean, because let's just be realistic about this. We all know that if Terrence Crawford's mandatory was a Canelo Alvarez, was a Gilberto Ramirez, was a Gennady Golovkin, was a Chocolatito Gonzalez, and I'm talking about when all these guys were undefeated, if they were all in the same division, do you think Terrence Crawford would avoid his mandatory and fight against a Rocky Fielding? It would never happen, guys. It would never happen. And you certainly wouldn't get any Terrence Crawford fans saying, oh man, well matter of fact, let's use Jose Benavidez. He's a perfect example. Jose Benavidez, he called out Terrence Crawford. He walked up on Terrence Crawford, said, I'll beat your ass, I'll knock you out, etc., right? Undefeated champion, Jose Benavidez. He calls out Terrence Crawford, right? Now, the first question I want to ask you guys is, why is it when Jose Benavidez, he called out Terrence Crawford, he took the fight and knocked him out? Why hasn't Canelo did the same thing with Jermall Charlo? Something else I want to mention, you guys know that if Jose Benavidez was calling out Terrence Crawford, and let's just say Terrence Crawford, he didn't fight Jose Benavidez, right? Let's say that Jose Benavidez is following him around, and let's just say Jose Benavidez is Terrence Crawford's #1 contender, just like Jermall Charlo. Fans are not going to be sitting there protecting Terrence Crawford like fans are trying to protect and defend Canelo Alvarez. It would not happen. You guys know. I mean, let's just be realistic. When it comes to black fans are quick to start saying another black fighter is ducking someone. I mean, soon as Terrence Crawford confronted Errol Spence, all of a sudden, black fans immediately start saying, oh, look at Errol Spence. He's ducking Crawford, etc., etc. So my point is, they don't show that type of loyalty to black fighters. They don't show the same type of loyalty that Mexican fans show to Canelo Alvarez. But my point is, once again, we should be pushing for the best fights, guys. Regardless if you think your guy can win or lose, at least you know how good he is. You know if he's great or not. But we have to see Canelo fight against the best opponents is my point, guys. So there's no doubt about it. If Canelo goes in there and he fights against Danny Jacobs, and I'm going to tell you guys, that's a very, very difficult fight for both Canelo and Danny Jacobs. That is truly a 50-50 fight in my eyes. I can tell you right now, I truly believe that Canelo Alvarez will be a more difficult fight for Danny Jacobs than a rematch with Gennady Golovkin. I truly believe that because Canelo Alvarez is more versatile. You know, he can do a lot more different things in the ring compared to a Golovkin. Golovkin is a lot more tailor-made, a lot more predictable, if you will. So that's why I believe that this is a 50-50 fight. But when it comes to the scorecards, this is more like a 60-40 fight in favor of Canelo Alvarez. Because we all know, no matter who fights Canelo Alvarez at this point, you're going to have to dominate Canelo Alvarez at least. You're going to have to dominate him, I would say at least damn near 9 rounds to 3. At a minimum, you got to dominate him at least 9 rounds to 3, and they have to be clean, clear-cut rounds that you have won. Because I'm telling you right now, if Danny Jacobs were to win 8 rounds to 4, they ain't going to give him the fight. I don't believe they're going to give him the fight. Unless it's like extremely obvious. Like he's knocking Canelo's head back and Canelo's not touching Danny Jacobs. But if the rounds are close, but it clearly looked like Danny Jacobs won the rounds, they're not going to give him the fight if it's 8 rounds to 4. I don't believe so. Danny Jacobs is going to have to really hurt Canelo. He's going to have to knock him down. He's going to have to damn near get a couple 10-8 rounds for him to really get a decisive win. I mean, understand something, guys. When Shane Mosley completely dominated Oscar De La Hoya, one judge still had Oscar De La Hoya winning the fight. When Canelo Alvarez fought against Floyd Mayweather, one judge had it a draw. When Canelo Alvarez fought against Erislandy Lara, one judge had Erislandy Lara winning almost every single round in that fight. So it's an uphill battle going up against Canelo Alvarez. Danny Jacobs is going to have to really hurt a Canelo Alvarez to get the win. And I'm telling you right now, remember I said this. If Danny Jacobs clearly wins this fight and he gets robbed, none of the fans that said Gennady Golovkin was robbed and he really beat Canelo Alvarez, none of those fans are going to be in the comment section saying Danny Jacobs was robbed. He won that fight. Because once again, the fans that said Gennady Golovkin won, they weren't saying it just because they thought he won. They said it because they understood the ramifications of Gennady Golovkin losing that fight to Canelo Alvarez. Golovkin was not supposed to lose to Canelo. Fans understand that Gennady Golovkin, he was already looked at as a hype job. Losing to Canelo Alvarez further proved and confirmed that he was a hype job. That is the true definition of a hype job. In fact, Gennady Golovkin's biggest advocate, Jim Lampley, who praises Golovkin to death, he called the man a living legend as he was walking to the ring for the rematch against Canelo Alvarez. Even Jim Lampley said before the fight, if Golovkin loses to Canelo Alvarez, his entire career will be looked at as a joke. And this is the reason why fans have to save face now and say, no, he won that fight. Because they understand that if they admit that he lost the fight, then they would have to admit exactly what Jim Lampley stated. Gennady Golovkin's career is a joke because he lost the most important fight of his career. Keep in mind, guys, Gennady Golovkin, he was backed up against a smaller Canelo Alvarez. Gennady Golovkin had been chasing the smaller Canelo Alvarez for the last 2 years. Now understand, Gennady Golovkin, he had opportunities to fight against pound for pound the #1 best fighter in the world 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago now, and that was Andre Ward. Now keep in mind, guys, Golovkin wanted to fight Chavez at 168. He wanted to fight Carl Froch at 168, but he did not want to fight pound for pound the best fighter in the world, Andre Ward, at 168. So he continued to chase Canelo Alvarez. And he ends up fighting Canelo Alvarez twice. He struggles, and then he loses in the second fight. And I truly believe if they face off in a third fight, Canelo Alvarez will stop Gennady Golovkin or hurt him really bad. I truly believe he will really get hurt in that third fight. But my point is, Gennady Golovkin, he tried to go the easy route. He turned down fighters that were considered pound for pound the best in the world. He figured he could beat Canelo Alvarez for sure, and that backfired. And don't get me wrong, the fight was close enough to go either way. But the fact that you have the smaller guy backing up the Terminator, if you will, Gennady Golovkin, the monster, the man who knocks out everyone he faces, you got him boxing, moving away from his opponent, and you got Canelo Alvarez coming in like he's the Terminator. You can't call it a robbery. You cannot call it a robbery, that's for sure. Gennady Golovkin left that fight up in the air for the judges to decide. And there's no doubt that Canelo Alvarez, he was the aggressor in that fight. And the fact that I'm telling you guys that I think Canelo will stop or at least drop Gennady Golovkin in the third fight, that tells you how the second fight went. So once again, man, let's see what happens with negotiations. Eddie Hearn is supposed to be negotiating with Canelo and Golden Boy to make a possible fight, but there's no guarantee. That doesn't mean that the fight will most likely happen, because it was only a couple weeks ago that Eddie Hearn was negotiating with Gennady Golovkin to put Golovkin in there with Caleb Smith, and we never got any response from Gennady Golovkin's team. So once again, this is what DAZN and Eddie Hearn wants. We don't know if this is what Canelo wants. That's all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one. Yep.